Hello everyone and welcome back to Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. So today we're going to be reviewing Still Austin Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Now this one comes in at 98.4% proof. The mash bill on this guy is 70% white corn, 20% rye, 5% malted barley, 100% Texas whiskey. It's also aged for at least a minimum of 2 years. So for all you lead slingers out there, strap on up. Let's get into this review. Yippee-ki-yay, mother... Hello everyone and welcome back. So I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on the Still Austin. I've heard that it's complex, that it's not complex, that you can taste the youthful notes in it, that you don't pick up any of the youthful notes. So I'm going to go ahead and figure this one out for myself. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. It's like a pie crust with a lot of like baking spices kind of all over it. Like a really like a rich caramel to it too. There's almost a almost like a marshmallow like sweetness to it as well. Not picking up a lot of fruitiness on the nose. Not picking up a lot of oak either. There is definitely some corn influence on the nose, some of that sweetness. Then, like I said, that pie crust with those baking spices, a little bit of like a marshmallow sweetness a little bit further into the glass. And then a little bit further away, it's like a little bit of nuttiness going on in there as well. Like you're roasting some peanuts or something. Pretty interesting nose. Really again, not a lot of youthful notes. There is that corn influence, like I said. Some of that like corn sweetness on there. Let's go ahead and get to the palate, guys. Cheers. So, to me, it actually drinks hotter than 98.4% proof. I think that has to do with the rye. It is 20% rye, fairly high. So there is now there is a little bit of that Texas funk on there, almost like mesquite. Definitely a lot of cinnamon in there, a lot of baking spices, Some sweetness on the front of the palate, probably from that corn influence. Not picking up a lot of fruity notes at all, not picking up a lot of oak either. Definitely some corn sweetness on the front of the palate. Wouldn't necessarily call that youthful notes. I didn't really pick up any youthful notes on the first sip. A lot of baking spices, rye spices right in the middle to the back of the palate, leaving you like with a little bit of a peppery finish in there. Let's go ahead and get a second sip, guys. So that sip changed a little bit. So front of the palate is there's definitely that corn sweetness, almost like a little bit of like a marmalade, if you will, on the front of the palate. That's kind of where I'm getting any type of fruitiness is on the front. Middle of the palate is still a lot of those baking spices mixed with those rye spices. I can't really pick up the actual rye, but you're definitely still getting some of that spiciness that kind of goes across the middle of that palate. And then there's some brown butter that kind of flows into the finish with some of that Texas funk. Really nice. I mean, the finish is, I would say, short to medium, if that. It doesn't really linger on that much. Again, it does drink hotter than 98.4% proof. I would say maybe somewhere in like the 107 range. Again, that probably has a lot to do with those rye spices. Again, front of the palate, some of that corn sweetness. I do pick up some of that corn. A little bit of like a marmalade, and then kind of flows into some baking spices, some rye spices that kind of linger on in the middle there. Almost like a marshmallowy sweetness there, kind of into the back, mixed with some like a brown butter. It's not very viscous, doesn't coat the palate that much. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the last sip, guys. Cheers. So, yeah, again, front of the palate's not really changing. The first sip was a little different from the second and third. Still some of that corn. That corn is not really going away. So it's like a sweet, really sweet, like marmalade on the front, middle of the palate. They're actually, going into the finish now. There is a little bit of like some nuttiness to it. I got a little bit of nuttiness on the nose. Didn't really pick it up on the first and second sip, but on that third sip, there's some like an almond, like a pecan, kind of flowing through into the with that brown butter. Little bit of a peppery finish, possibly from that rye. So I mean, overall thoughts, for being aged at least a minimum of 2 years, I would guess that there has to be some kind of older whiskey in here. I wouldn't say too old though, because I'm not really getting a lot of that oak influence. So as far as complexity, I wouldn't say that it's very complex, but I also wouldn't say that it's not complex at all. I would say it falls right in the middle. There are some flavors that kind of evolve. Like I said, I picked up some of those flavors on that second and third sip. The first sip was kind of maybe just getting my palate, adjusted. But I mean, for being a minimum of 2 years, there's really not a lot of youthful notes on this one. I do get that corn influence on the front of the palate, but I don't get it anywhere else. I don't get it in the middle of the palate. I don't get it into the finish. You do pick up that 20% rye across the center of the palate with some of those baking spices. Overall, though, this is actually, to me, it's actually really good. It's actually a really good, bourbon whiskey for being as young as it is. It does offer a lot of flavor to it. This is something I would really like to sit down with and kind of explore a little bit more. See what happens when it gets a little bit lower in the bottle. Overall, though, I'm pretty impressed with the Still Austin. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to Still Austin Whiskey and Aaron over at Robro Marketing for supplying me with this bottle to review on the channel. Again, pretty impressed, to be honest with you. A very flavorful whiskey, coming out of Texas. For being aged a minimum of 2 years, very, very impressed with this one. I do want to sip on it a little bit more to see what my final thoughts are for the year, see where it lands. Does it land in my top 10 whiskeys of the year? Who knows, guys? But if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You can also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.